You may not understand or remember the cause of your trauma. Hello, I'm Rodger Duckworth, and for the last 30 years I've helped people, often at the edge of despair, not just manage but to overcome their chronic health conditions and chronic pain. We may not know or remember consciously the cause of our trauma. Now let's just clarify what trauma is. Trauma, in the language I'm talking about now, is not what happened to you. What happened to you may be the traumatizing event, because trauma literally comes from the Latin, which means wound. So the wound is not what happened to you. The wound is what is in your body. That's what trauma means. So the cause of your wound, the cause of your trauma, let's just share those words together if it helps. Because then we go, well, if I have a wound and I have hurt and I have dis-ease, if I have chronic autoimmune, then I have potentially trauma. Now, the traumatizing event may be before our conscious memory began. So we could look at even transgenerational trauma. Transgenerational trauma I've done in other videos, but we know from research that conditioning to the body to respond in particular ways and traumatizing events in the past in our ancestors 3 generations previously can mean that our nervous system responds in the same way that their nervous system had learned that it had to do to survive. So we think we come as this blank sheet when we're born. And the evidence currently is that that's not the case. That we do have some ancestral things brought forwards, Holocaust survivors, ancestors with domestic abuse, whatever we've gone through, war, political violence, whatever has happened in our ancestry may well exist within our blueprint. Now that can sit within the dormant DNA to be activated through an epigenetic process, which I've also done other videos on epigenetics. We believe that consciously we don't really remember much under the age of 2, 3, 4, largely due to brain development. I know myself, because in some of my own trauma training, I got quite a strong somatic and unconscious response when looking at some anesthetic trauma, which is part of my history in my early years. And I had really powerful unconscious responses in my physiology to anesthetics I had when I was certainly under 1 and maybe even 6 weeks old. And if we go back to those early years, and it's a long time ago, I won't say when, but many decades ago, they believed that babies could not feel pain. I mean, those of us who are parents, it sounds crazy to think that a baby's not going to feel pain. I mean, if they cry, I mean, that's either because they've got some colic, or they've got some wind or discomfort, or they're lonely, or you accidentally pinch them or knock them and they feel pain. Of course they feel pain, but because we had this naive notion of the brain development and prefrontal cortex not being developed, we thought that we understood where pain was coming from. And so as a result, they did not administer analgesics as part of the anesthetic process. And so the unconscious mind and nervous system was experiencing all of the traumas of the cuts and the incisions for those little ones. And interestingly, our unconscious nervous system remembers that. And not just our nervous system, but the whole of our being. The fascial system with its memory and communication. The nervous system of the gut may well have responded. And so there are lots of reasons why we might say, oh, well, I think there's a traumatized nervous system. Well, I've never had any trauma. You don't know, and the chances are you probably have, because none of us get through life without trauma. And trauma, when it's considered as the wound, the impact in our nervous system and how it's responding in order to survive and cope, is almost inevitable in all of us. And so we don't have to remember it. Well, not consciously. And something that I feel very strongly about these days is that a lot of people have forgotten about the unconscious. You know, Freud spent a lot of time talking about the unconscious, and we could put a whole new video about what the unconscious might be. But the unconscious is something which is maybe not rational thought, not recallable memory in that way. It might be something from our enteric nervous system, from the intelligence of our heart nervous system. This embodied, energetic quality of an experience that we all feel, that we might hear a sound, or we might have a particular sensation in our body which feels familiar to some point in the past, and then our whole body and mind and thoughts can start to respond as if back in that time. And that really is what trauma is. And so we don't need to remember cognitively, because our body might remember what our mind cannot.